Hello, welcome to the Reloading Podcast here on the Firearms Radio Network, presented by Primary Arms. Tonight, we have a special guest with us, Robin from Reading Reloading. So, I am currently in another meeting as well for 4-H, so I'm going to turn this fun over to everybody else. And that was impressive because he was even
good.
muted.
Yeah.
He was even muted when that did that because it was on the screen muted, unless it was delay. I don't know. Anyway, so Robin, I'm going to turn this over to everybody else. And I don't know if you've met Sharenda or not. It's been a little bit since you've been on. So
here's our favorite troublemaking lady right there.
Now we're back.
Welcome back, Sharenda. Good to see you.
Yeah, I missed you guys too.
Hey, well, Robin, what have you been up to lately?
Oh, we've been actually in the last year and a half or so buying lots of CNC machines, hiring people so that we could up our productivity and really cut those lead times down. Folks were struggling a little bit with the fact that, a year ago, we were probably 20 to 22 weeks out on most orders. And through the application of lots of money to buy more American-made CNC equipment and to hire really good people to run it and to do away with some old equipment, basically creating more productivity per square foot of space in those departments, we've been able to catch up, and we've actually been able to start to get some stuff on the shelves now. So we're turning stuff around in a day or so.
Well, Robin, I'll tell you, when you took my wife and I through your plant, I was impressed by how you have the older machinery stacked up herringbone style, just so you could make product. Exactly.
And those are critical because that was back in the screw machine department where we make where we blank all those die bodies before they then go on to higher precision machinery for all the internals.
Mm-hmm.
Part of that herringbone idea too is you're working off of 12-foot bars. So those bars have to go somewhere.
Mm-hmm. That's right. We have a screw machine in a little factory I'm working at now, and it's like they got 10-foot tube they got to put in from the front end.
Yeah.
You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yes, sir. Brown and Sharp screw machines.
Well, this one's a straw, but that's another story.
Okay. Yep.
Anyway, please continue, sir. You're doing great.
Well, it's just we really everybody in the industry was severely challenged, obviously, with the things that happened. The Trump slump was the Trump slump for a while, but then we had what I love to call the summer of love, when we were burning down the cities and courthouses and all that, which of course increased firearm sales. And then beyond that, summer of love, yeah. But beyond that, we got a huge number of new participants in the shooting sports, primarily because they wanted to defend themselves. And the thing about new participants they need to shoot more because they're trying to learn and they're trying to become proficient. They use more ammo, and we come up against an ammo shortage and a lack of ammo being made and all the rest. So reloading went absolutely off the wall.
Yep.
Statistically, and I haven't seen anything in the last year or two, but we had reached a point where at one point in time, NSSF had determined that somewhere around, 12, 13, 14% of Americans were reloading. Americans that shot were reloading. And 2 years ago, that number was up to almost 25% on a user base that was much, much larger. So you have that compounding effect of, yes, it's a greater percentage of those that are users, but we also have a much bigger group of folks that are now in the activity that are shooters. So how do you respond? You make more, but being Reading, we don't farm anything out. We don't subcontract. We don't make anything overseas. So what we do is we up our internal productivity. And we took one full year where we really didn't even add any new cartridges because we took all of that engineering time, talent, and everything that we had available to us to increase productivity, to get the orders out the door for the people that needed stuff.
Mm-hmm.
223, 308, 9, 40, 45, and then 6.5 Creedmoor We're like, never take the tools off and just let the machine run.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, well, I understand that. Also understand that, you know, things, especially for the odd calibers, that the cost had gone up for those quite a bit.
Again, it's, you know, the tough part with all that stuff. Well, I don't know, from the ammo side, yes, but from all of it, it really comes down to the efficiencies of long run production. If it takes 2 hours to change the machine over and put the tooling on it and install the no program and get it up and running, and I'm going to make 25, let's say, I don't know.
280 actually improved.
Oh no, 280 actually improved is not. No, we're gonna. They're still being made. We make those in the hundreds. But when I say we're gonna make 25 of something, it's going to be like a, you know, like a 17 Hebe or a, you know, some wild crazy thing that's in our custom series. Okay. Because, you know, we catalog, I can't even tell you well over 1,000 different cartridges because of all the stuff that we do, you know. Over the years, we've done so many cartridges for wildcatters, and we still maintain them and we keep an inventory. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy when you walk down those aisles and see some of the cartridges that are back there. And you might find a cartridge that you're familiar with, but of course we all know there's a 40 degree improved, which is the Ackley, but there might be a 35 and a 38 degree improved. And we probably got dies for all of them.
I've been through their facility. Like I said, the old timers remember the weekend after the show, the guided tour that Robin took my wife and I through. She was impressed by the machinery, and so was I. And I worked around that kind of machinery most of my life. And Robin was very kind, very generous. So only a few things he would let me publicize.
Everybody has to have their little tricks that set them apart. And well, let's just say there are certain things that make Reading a little different. You got to see them. You got to see them. We just couldn't talk about them or take pictures of them.
Yep. There's a question for you, Robin, from the land down under.
No, sir. Reading does not have a shop front. We do not sell online, and we do not sell direct to consumers. We work through, actually, in Australia, Heron Security is the wholesaler, and they sell to many folks in Australia that we have a very good presence down there. The relationship with Heron goes back, I think, over 50 years now. It's one of our oldest customers.
Thank you, Robin. Appreciate that answer, sir.
Absolutely.
Jim, I hope that helps.
For those of you that are on the East Coast in the middle, you can see my true colors. I have my Wawa cup here.
Yeah, but the real question is, what's in it? Iced tea, I hope.
Nope, Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola tonight.
Iced tea for me.
I love my iced tea. Except, you know, I lived all those years in Massachusetts when I was with H&R, and I had to get used to the fact that there is no iced tea after Labor Day because that's just for the summer. That's a real story. I mean, the diner that I used to eat in all the time, I went in and got went in to get my chicken parm and get my iced tea 3 days after I had gotten it, and they went, no iced tea now. Monday was Labor Day. We don't have, it's the winter. We don't, iced tea's only for the summer. And they're serious.
Yeah.
Oh, my position at Reading, I am the executive vice president. And
basically, he's the guy that runs the place.
Years. Been there about 15 years.
He's the guy that runs the place. Top dog in the plant.
Well, I do we all have our things to do, and I do my part. I have always done lots of the marketing and sales, but as I have grown older, I guess they think I've become wiser and I become more involved in the administrative roles, and I'm not doing as much of the sales and marketing as I used to. I still do a lot, but I've been sucked into other directions because of the lovely people at our government that have so many different regs and things we have to read and comply with, and forms to fill out and surveys that we have to, you know how that goes. All that good fun stuff.
you just astounded me because it's like you don't even make any firearms or ammunition. Well, you don't even need an FFL.
And moreover, I worked with the state of New York, and I got our SIC code finally changed to what we really are, which is the manufacturer of tools and dies.
Yes,
Because for years they had us down in the same SIC code as firearms and ammunition makers.
Mhm.
And I will tell you, and I shouldn't say this in general public, but it was kind of fun when OSHA had a targeted enforcement, and they came in and they said, we're here to inspect you because there had been a problem. This was years ago when there was a black powder substitute plant up in New Hampshire that blew up, I don't know, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago. And they came in and said, based upon your SIC code. And I said, no, that's not our SIC code. Well, that's what we have on file. I said, no, that's not it. And I said, in fact, here's the paperwork from the New York State Department of Labor, who has identified us as not being in that SIC code. Thank you. Have a lovely day. There's a nice place to sell seafood down at the corner on your way out. And that's how a targeted enforcement works. A targeted enforcement can only go into those indicated SIC codes because of something that happened somewhere else, and we were not part of that targeted enforcement because we weren't in that SIC code anymore. And I had New York State Department of Labor paperwork to prove that.
The most dangerous product or byproduct I ever saw in your plant were all the damn chips, the metallic chips,
yeah,
on the floor or in the machine beds.
On their way to the spinners and out back to go to a big scrap yard and get melted down and used again somewhere.
Recycling.
Yep. Absolutely.
Like I said, Reading reloading equipment doesn't need an FFL because they don't make firearms.
No.
They don't make ammo. They don't even make powder or primer.
None of the above. And actually, we don't maintain any of that stuff on site because, our testing is dimensional. Powder companies are the guys that have to worry about the rest. All of our work needs to be dimensional because we need to make sure that we make a die that has a case come out of it after operation that's going to fit a minimum SAMI chamber or CIP chamber. And that's what we live and die by, is to make sure that we have a good, clean fit, have good function, and everything works the way it should. And that's one of the things that happen that we that's one of the trade secrets is how far do you push it back to get it to pop out to where you need it to be.
Mm-hmm.
I see new calibers in the coming year. We're going to do a full selection on 7PRC. We're going to do, now gracious, see, let me see. I don't think I have that on this computer. This is my home. I'm at home right now and I have a pretty parallel computer, but oh wait, here we go. Let me see if this will open. Let's see what we can do here.
While Robin's browsing his computer, I just want to remind our listeners, Robin is doing this voluntarily on his own time. Yes, he may be the EVP of Reading, but he's doing this because he loves what we do.
And you guys, I mean, we've, Jim, you and I have developed, our friendship goes back a lot of years.
Yes, sir, it does.
And I'm happy to be here. And you know what I'm really happy to do is it's not just about selling Reading. It's about the hobby. It's about the activity of hand loading. And that's really what we want to do. I wish everybody was involved in just growing the activity, growing our base of users, and all of the good folks that will stand up for us when it's time to vote. Well, that is if they can actually get counted. But
well, I like the last word you used, hand loading. Okay.
Reading's got an interesting philosophy, and maybe I'm somewhat responsible for it. I don't know that it was entirely there, but yeah, we kind of draw a line between reloaders and hand loaders.
Absolutely.
Right.
Reloaders are, and Jim's heard this before, but reloaders are people that are trying to produce good quality ammunition, as good as what they can buy off the shelf for less money, so they can shoot more and have a good time and learn and do all those things. Hand loaders, or as I like to say, the Reading customer only buys factory ammo because they can't find brass and they need to make brass somehow. And, we do better. We do more. We do different. Okay, I'm looking at the new stuff here. So We're adding a number of items to the Master Hunter series, which I'm sure you guys remember. That's the traditional full length die with a carbide button, but also the full competition seating die. And so we're adding 22 Creedmoor, we're adding 6.8 Western, 300 PRC, 7 PRC. We're adding all of the Type S dies for the 22 Creedmoor this year, so we'll have bushing dies for that. We're adding 6.8 Western throughout all the bushing dies and things like that. In standard dies, Series D, we are adding the 8.6 Blackout. And then, of course, all the way across the line, 7 PRC. And then in customs, we're going to be adding the 6 millimeter ARC, the 338 Weatherby RPM, and then, now I got to scroll down. Come on. Oh, gosh. Fast processors in Excel sometimes make it crazy because it goes 500 pages down with a little swoop. The last thing is we're adding the 30 Super Carry. That has not seen the kind of life and excitement to get it out of the custom series category right now. When I say custom series, that means we stock it, but it's still considered a custom die, not a normal series die.
I can understand that.
It's a shame. It just hasn't. Well, you know what? In some respects, I've jokingly called it for some time the 32 H&R Magnum of auto guns. It's neat. It does some cool stuff. It replicates bigger cartridges with a smaller round, higher velocity, and lighter recoil. But it's not finding itself. And I'm hearing this from dealers. I'm hearing it from some of my major national writers. Didn't turn out to be what everybody was hoping for.
The 9mm has become the de facto carry round for the past, I'm going to call it 15 years.
Agreed.
And, getting people to break away from something that they can either produce themselves or buy at a very cheap price.
Yep.
Makes it very difficult for another pistol round to come into existence.
Well, one of the things that's really cutting into it too right now that's actually starting to eat away a little bit at the 9 is the 380. We're getting better bullets. We're getting new guns. We're getting a bunch of things happening in the 380 where it's becoming ballistically better, and it's kind of eating into the bottom end of the 9.
I think you're going to see that because the aging of the American shooter.
Sure.
We're getting older. Our hands aren't able to rack slides as well as they used to, so they don't have to overcome the heavy springs and everything else. So
right.
That's what you're seeing there. I still think that everybody missed it with the 38 Super way back when. Okay. I think that was a way more efficient round, velocity wise, than any of the 9s.
Yep.
But it's basically, other than in competition, it's a dead cartridge.
Yeah. Yep. And I years ago, going back to when it was popular, not quite Bren 10 era, but I was a fan of the 10mm, and I actually had one of the FBI 1006s, and it's a big, heavy gun. But boy, with the real Norma 10mm designed to be what the 10mm was supposed to be before it got Americanized and all the power came out of it, that was quite a gun. That was a 41 Magnum in a semi.
It was. The Norma Magnum was a real round.
Yep. The original 10mm, as Norma built it originally for the Bren 10, was it would get the job done incredibly well.
Mm-hmm.
But you needed a big gun to shoot it out You might remember that Norma ammo was also when Colt had some problems with their Delta Elite, and they were having some problems with it with some of the hotter 10 millimeter ammo that was out there. But that 1006 Smith was really quite a nice gun.
Well, Smith & Wesson did it right, though, because they fully supported that chamber in the 10.
Correct.
Colt didn't do that. Colt left a big smile down on the bottom of it, and they had problems with the Delta.
Yep. But that 1006, I really enjoyed that. That was a fun gun to shoot. It was a lot of fun, and it worked beautifully. But it was also it was a stainless steel frame and a stainless steel slide. It was a big, heavy gun, but it was what the round required.
And the Bren 10, I handled one when it first came out, and it was a big, heavy gun too. Sorry.
Yep, it was a big, giant CZ75.
Right.
Yeah, beautiful gun. Really a beautiful gun. I still think aesthetically and in the hand, the CZ75 is one of the most, at least for me, is one of the most comfortable handguns I've ever handled.
Robin, I'm not sure who put this comment up, but it seems like a legit question.
Yeah, I'm okay.
Facebook user, can you explain the benefit of your competition crimp dies over, let's say, a Leaf factory? Oh boy.
Well, here's the thing. We don't really make a competition crimp die. Our competition dies don't even have a crimp in them. Now, we make a micrometer crimp die. And the reason for that is it was designed so that you could adjust crimps on the fly when you're working on a progressive press without having to strip the whole die out of the turret head. We all say it's great. We trim everything to the same length, so a taper crimp's going to be okay. But you know what? When we're looking at differences in brass wall thickness, that same length is going to be considerably different in terms of what kind of crimp you're going to get, depending on the wall thickness of the brass itself.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Schaefer. Appreciate your comment.
Hey, Robin, this is Ray from Millsop Drill.
Yes, sir.
I know everybody during COVID had material issues getting material in. How did your company overcome that? Or did you see it coming? Did you pre-buy or did you struggle through it? What did you guys do?
We're a 77-year-old company. So our vendor relationships, number one, are long and solid. Our castings all come from a casting company down in Pennsylvania that's over 100 years old and family owned. Our steel is All American Steel. Our steel supplier out of Syracuse, who's obviously the wholesaler. We buy way out. We saw things coming. We had some concerns. Our purchasing guys did a really good job of lining everything up to make sure as we saw surges, we continued to surge our own purchases, so that we never really ran out. There were a couple of times when we got a little short on T7 frames, but they came in time. But again, I like to say that, when your steel and your castings and everything important's not sitting on a boat off of California because it came from China, it's a lot easier to get it. When your castings are, and I love the joke because Jim's heard me probably say this, but I used to get some of my writers razzed up, and you always do the things say, well, yeah, we're 100% American made. We even use American machinery. I said, but we do have to import our castings. And the guys all give me the eye like, oh yeah, oh what are that? I said, yeah, we have to bring them in from Pennsylvania.
You're terrible, Robin. Don't quit though, please. Whatever you do.
Yeah, that's good to hear. And I work quite a bit with the steel industry. And I know the steel industry didn't shut down during COVID, but I know they had issues getting some of the admixtures and components they need to make steel. And I don't know if that affected you, but it sounds like it didn't.
We were lucky. I mean, you know what? I'm going to tell you that we probably hit numbers inside the house once in a while that were uncomfortable, but we never ran out. So we were very fortunate that way. And one other thing that I will tell you, and this isn't just to pat the owners of Reading on the back, but I'll pat the owners of the Reading on the back. New York, like so many states, shut everything down for 2 months. And the response of the ownership of Reading was to pay every employee their full 40-hour salary and full benefits for those 2 months. Because our employees are why we make the quality we make. Yeah, the machinery is great. Without the right folks running them, without their care, without their concern, without their consideration for the brand, Reading wouldn't be what Reading is. And it's funny. I've been writing an intro for a new employee manual, and that was one of the things I talked about, how the work that's done in this factory becomes the envy of the world while they're trying to figure out how to do what a small upstate New York community can do in terms of the people and the quality. But we did take care of our folks. And it's funny because after the fact, we wound up, as we were doing our expansion with the new machinery and things, we didn't have a lot of trouble when everybody was looking for help and couldn't find help. We had folks kind of on a waiting list because of what we had done.
Well, I commend you. That's the kind of company people want to work for.
Family owned, we don't report to a bunch of shareholders. It's a family owned company. Do I reload? What do I reload? Oh my goodness. The podcast doesn't go on that long, but I will tell you the only thing I don't load in shot shell is 10 gauge because I do all the others, including 28 and 16 and 410. As far as long gun stuff, boy, there's not a whole lot that I don't, because I don't smoke, I don't drink. My hobbies are sort of limited to motorcycles and firearms. So it's very funny story. I found a set of 7mm mag dies on the shelf a while back, and I said, I must have bought a 7 mag because I don't buy dies if I don't buy a gun, but I don't remember buying it. Well, I had a dehumidifier rod go in one of my safes, and I had some mildew starting to grow. And as I started to dig everything out to clean it up and get the mildew off and re-oil everything, darn if I didn't find a 7 mag. So I do have one.
Oh my gosh, what a tough problem to have.
Well, it's one of those things that, this has kind of been my life's work. I mean, I've worked in this industry for a long time, and I was the kid whose Uncle Jack was the county commander of the American Legion, had the big gun collection, and as the other World War II guys were dying, a lot of the widows would give the guns to Uncle Jack. So I grew up in Uncle Jack's basement playing with, all kinds of stuff. I mean, little kid, 4, 5, 6 years old, and I could tell you, I can see that basement in my mind. And I can tell you there's a big old server in the middle, and I can tell you what drawer to go over and open up because there were 3 4-shot Sharps pepper boxes in it. The drawer above that had a Nambu in it, not large trigger guard, the early one. Things like that. So, I mean, I grew up around that. In New Jersey, believe it or not, at age 10, you could get your junior hunting license and you could start to hunt small game. So I've been, I'm 65 years old. I got my hunting license when I was 10. And so you just kind of grow up in it. And if it's something you love, you don't do a whole lot else, I guess.
Understandable.
If I knew then what I knew now, my Christmas wish list would have been a lot different when I was younger.
Yeah. Well, mine was Craftsman tools for working on my motorcycles. And it was once in a while a new gun, but mostly down there in New Jersey, you couldn't hunt with rifles. So didn't have a whole lot of use for them, and you needed to have your bird guns, and then you needed to have something to shoot buckshot with because there were no slugs back when I was a boy. You weren't allowed to use them in Jersey. It was buckshot only. And when I was 14, my grandfather gave me my first deer gun, so to speak, which happens to be a fiberglass barreled Winchester 59 with a 28-inch full choke barrel on it, which I still have.
We have another question from for Facebook user.
Are
you planning on any upgrades to the T7 or any redesign?
Not at the moment. I mean, we've got some other folks that are coming out with new turret heads that go on it. I'm sure you saw the guys at Creedmoor Sports have got a couple of neat things they're doing. Mm-hmm. The T7 is just one of those things that it's so good. And, other folks have come out with more spots on the turret head. Other folks have come out with big, giant 10-station aluminum turret presses. And in 15 or 20 years, when Sierra sends them back one that's had over 1 million rounds loaded on it, and you put it on the indicators and nothing's worn other than the paint, then we'll see how they do with that stuff. But
Robin,
I think you guys saw that at NRA one time, didn't you, Jim? Did you see the one where we had with the gauges set up on it that had been over 1 million rounds at Sierra?
Exactly. I did see it. Well, I was going to beg you. I thought I was ready to get on my hands and knees and beg you to tell that story about that reloading press after 1 million rounds. Guys, remember
right.
I said
not cycles, rounds.
Right.
Just so you know that I've gone through 2 rock chuckers because of that problem.
You know, there's some things about what we do, and I can sit down and it's funny. I love to get into it with once in a while with a writer or somebody say, well, you're this much more money. I go, okay, you want to know why? What we do that nobody else does? Well, for instance, on the T7, T7s are even better now than they were 2 years ago because they're being made on a new 5-axis CNC. So that means that once they're clamped in, they never get moved again. It all happens in the machine. Right down to the fact, and Jim will know what this is, there's a Ruby probe indicator on it, so it does its own CMM function at the end. And literally can go around and check holes and dimensions and distances and all that.
Uh-oh. Robin locked up.
Okay, I had a spinny thing for a minute, so I'm back. But one of the things I was going to say is, you know, the T7 is our flagship press. Its design is such that it tips into square. I like that. Yeah, that's about right. It's not broken, so don't fix it. The story on how we got that 1 million round press back was I got an email from the guys in the ballistics labs at Sierra, and they said, hey, guess what? You know, we have to record everything we do every round we load because we're a ballistics lab. That's what we're here for. And, you know, that T7 that you sent us way back at the beginning, we've now loaded over 1 million rounds on it. Would you be interested in getting it back to take a look at it? And we did, and we were very impressed with the fact that it's just the same as new, other than there's a whole lot of paint worn off of it from handling. In fact, it was so old that the very first T7s did not have a hole drilled in the turret for that, you know, the pin and the rod with the ball on the end to turn the head with, and you had to turn the head by hand. So this one had more paint worn off of it than most. But I said, yeah, send it back, you know, and we got it back and we looked at it and said, would you please send us a letter, you know, indicating this? Because we'd like to go show it off. And we took it to the NRA convention, showed it off there. And one of my experimental machinists built 2 really cool little clamps that clamped 2 dial indicators on so that you could move the RAM up and down and see what the dial indicators did. And they didn't move at all. So, you know, after 1 million rounds, there was no play, there was no run out, there was no problem at all. And in a plate check, effectively every part on it was within new spec after 1 million rounds documented by somebody that wasn't us. And remember, these are 1 million rounds. This isn't, okay, we put it on a machine that pulled the handle 1 million times. It was used for real. It was size and brass. It was seating bullets.
And a lot of rifle bullets.
A lot of rifle bullets. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So it's a great machine. I love my T7. I mean, I live by 2 machines. I have the T7 and I have an Ultramag. So, I'll tell you what, you want to lube the RAM. Eric wants to lube the RAM on his T7 press. Imperial sizing die wax. It's effectively a high pressure draw die lubricant.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I told Jim heard this story. I'll tell this story for all the newbies. So when it comes down to the T7, that RAM is turned on an American-made CNC lathe, but then it goes out for centerless grinding, and the machinist knows what centerless grind is because it's a specialized grinding machine that grinds and leaves you with an absolute dead, round, perfect diameter because it's ground to that diameter. And because it's centerless, that means it's actually grinding in 3 different locations. So it has to be perfectly round and true. So that RAM gets centerless ground. The body of the press, of course, is machined again on American-made CNCs. But then the through hole is actually honed to fit the RAM. So when I got to Reading, I thought, I'd been there about a year. I had a friend that was in the industrial lubricants business. Actually, his father was the guy that invented the Remington Gold Medallion bore cleaning system, you know, with the wet and dry lubes and all that sort of thing. And they had a really neat new Teflon-based lube that used something called Krytox. It was the latest generation of Teflon. Wonderful stuff. And I thought, you know, we tell everybody we need to, that you should store your dies with some lubricant protectant on it. We talk about you should lubricate your ram, etc. So I called him up and I said, hey, would you prototype me a couple things we'd like to try? And he goes, oh, this Krytox stuff would be amazing because it's a dry lube. It's not going to get on the knee or jeans or something, like grease would, things like that. If you bump the ram. He said, fabulous. So he sent me a can of it to try, and I went out to assembly. They just put a brand new T7 together. It was still sitting in the assembly rack, and I ran the ram all the way down so that I could spray it with the dry lube, and then I pressed down hard on the ram handle and went up halfway, and it stopped dead.
Ouch.
Dead. Wouldn't move. What the heck this is? So I'm leaning on it, and I'm not a tiny person by any means. And it's not that I'm strong, but you get something that's like a ram and you're standing up and you can get down on that you can get down on the operating handle, and all of a sudden you can lay a lot on it. So I laid a lot on it. Well, Krytox is a Teflon based lubricant, and of course Teflon are tiny little balls of nylon. That's how it works. Well, I had to get a leather hammer and basically beat on the handle so I could get the ram to go back down to break it loose. And when it went down, I had made Teflon tape. That Teflon was jammed up so tight because the clearance was so small that under compression, Krytox melts at 880 degrees. So clearly I exceeded the melt point through compression, and I made a piece of Teflon tape that I cut off with my thumbnail and peeled right off the ram. And then it worked fine. That gives you a little idea why our stuff lasts.
Remember, guys, you heard it here on the Reloading Podcast. Imperial sizing wax for the lube on the ram of a T7.
Works beautiful. Any press, it works great because it's a high pressure lubricant designed. Obviously, we're generating all that force off the ram that's going to size that case back. So if it works on the case, it's going to work well on the ram as well.
Kudos to Mr. Eric Smith, YouTube listener. That was the best question we've had tonight.
Good question.
And the gentleman from down under, Vem we call him, he thought your comment about Imperial sizing wax was hilarious, Robin. Thank you again, sir.
Very welcome. Very good. Very welcome. I love Down Under. I've spent quite a bit of time there over the years and when I was shot with another company, and love it down there. Great culture, great people. Probably still, at least in my experience, is one of the most polite places I've ever been on the face of the earth. People in Australia seem to really care about each other and care about we foreigners that come down. We, as they called me, Yanks. Yanks that came down. Yep. Very well treated. Had a really good time there. I was there for a number of the land warfare conferences over the years.
And just so happens we have a comment on screen. Doesn't need a real comment, but Eric Smith put up the comment that he just so happens to have some Imperial sizing wax.
Wonderful.
Good stuff, don't you know?
There's some miracles about that. And Imperial, people don't stick cases with Imperial because A, it's a very good lubricant, but B, through human nature, we're almost forced to use it the right way.
Yep.
Cases stick down at the web body junction where the brass is the thickest. Mm-hmm. When we put that Imperial on our thumb and when we rub the pot and put it on our thumb and our forefinger, we typically hold the case by the neck. I don't have a case, but I'll do this. And then we start to lube it from here. Well, guess what? We put the heaviest amount of lube naturally in the place where the most is required so that we don't wind up with sticking cases.
Very good.
People have gotten too used to volume lubing of cases, and depending upon evaporation to spread lubricant, and not take the time to hand load again.
We get into a little bit of problem with that as well because, besides the fact that our wife is going to kill us for getting it all over her cookie sheet when we're spraying it on, we tend to spray it down from the top, and you wind up with more spray lube on the shoulder than you do on the places that you really need it. And Imperial is a wonderful lubricant. It works so well. It's so easy. You've got to I tell people, you got to pick the case up anyway. So why not just do a little swoop with the fingers and you're done?
Exactly.
The nice thing about an imperial sizing wax is the fact that a little bit on your fingers goes a long way.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. You've got to be a pretty hardcore hand loader to use up a 2-ounce tin of imperial in a lifetime.
I've used a couple.
There you go.
I knew that was coming up, Paul. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm also the one here that that decides that I go through more barrels here than anybody else. So
good.
You know,
so
I keep the gunsmiths in business.
It's important. We need them. They need to be able to eat and live. So we we also hire people that hunt and shoot. And one of the things that I always get a kick out of when I'm interviewing new folks is the fact that one of the weeks that we close for a mandatory vacation is the opening week of gun deer season for the state of New York. Mm-hmm. And you know that when somebody gets excited about that, you know they're the right employee because they're committed and dedicated to the cause as well. But it's often a funny thing when you're sitting going through an interview process, because in my admin duties, that's been one of the things that I've taken over as well. And somebody goes, "Really? You mean you guys close for deer season?" Yeah, because nobody would want to come to work anyway. So it also happens to be Thanksgiving week up here, and so it works out well. But everybody, if you're not hunting deer, you probably want to spend time with your family. So it's a nice time to have with a plant closing. And Jim will tell you this as well. If you work in manufacturing, it's better to close the whole plant because you've got people that feed people. And eventually, if you have 8 or 10 people out for the same week, you've got a problem on your hands.
Corporate America needs to follow the same suit that you do.
We close the first week of August because it's the hottest week of the year, even though we're air conditioned. We close deer season, and we close between Christmas and New Year's because it's Christmas and New Year's.
We've got a comment from our Canadian friend, Jorgen Rangan. He wants to know if you need a Canuckian hunter testers.
Thank you. We certainly appreciate that. We have a good business in Canada. We've been operating in Canada for not long since the company was probably founded. Probably been selling into Canada since the 1950s, with lots of good folks up there. And I'll give a shout out to my friend Rene Deveau from X Reload, who grew to be a very, very good friend over the years, and he does a nice job up there. We've got lots of good folks up there. But Rene also stops by when on his way down to see, when he goes to visit his mom down in Florida, whatnot. He'll stop by and say hi at the shop on the way through once in a while. So he's a good man. Ex-Canadian military, started a little company out of his basement and turned out to be one of the biggest reloading resellers in Canada now.
Robin, tell me the story about the shooters from South Africa that you supported, please.
Yes, this goes back to the days of B. Hussein Obama, when he was our president, and he had it was the World Championships for, I'm trying to remember now. It was the
Camp Perry, wasn't it?
Actually, it was an international. No, it wasn't F class. Anyway, it was a world rifle championship. The ATF, under the direction of Mr. Hussein Obama, seized all of their ammunition and wouldn't allow it into the country. And it was actually the F class guys in the U.S. that originally reached out to Jeff Esterline at the time, who was at Brownells, and Jeff's a Masonic brother, and Jeff gave me a call and said, "Hey, what can we do to help these guys out? We're working on getting them bullets, and we're working on getting them brass and primers and that kind of stuff, but we need reloading equipment." And I said, "Yeah, we'll take care of that. Tell me what you need." And we ended up doing soup to nuts 7 complete reloading stations that got bolted onto tabletops in the hotel where the South African team was staying. And the Americans and a bunch of other folks got together and loaded all the ammunition so the South Africans could compete and not be frozen out of a competition because at the time our administration just didn't like South Africa for whatever reason and decided to go after the South African team that had come here to shoot. But we were very happy to be able to help with that. And then at the end, it was kind of interesting because we said, I'll tell you what we're going to do. He said, well, what do you want to do with all this stuff? I said, very easy. I said, at a very, very deeply discounted price, anybody out there at the event that wants to buy the stuff, South African team, sell it to them and send us a check back. And they said, that's great. Okay. And they sold most all of it off. And they called and said, okay, where do we send the check? And we said, right to your bank account to support your team. Thank you very much.
Wow.
So,
Guys, in other words, what Robin's saying is they sold the stuff and donated the money to the South African team.
yes, so that they could help out with all the hardship that they had gone through being in the United States. America needs to take care of our friends and allies.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Robin, I missed a major point there. How much did you charge the South Africans for their reloading equipment, sir?
Nothing.
Thank you. I wanted to make that point very clear.
And in fact, it went further in that when they sold off all that reloading equipment, it was donated to their team for funds to continue their program when they got back home. So hopefully when they came to the next internationals in 4 years, hopefully they were at a country that was more friendly and they would be able to compete better. They did pretty well. They didn't do as, obviously, if you're not bringing your own ammo from home, and you're loading it with C-clamps holding your press onto a desktop in your Holiday Inn, it's probably not the same as being home. But they still got to compete. And you know what? They came a long way to do that. And to have the administration in DC that hates all things good, or hated all things good at the time, try and cut them off. Well, there were a group of us in the industry that got together and made sure that didn't happen.
Shooters supporting shooters.
Absolutely. And it was a very nice thing to be able to do. And we enjoyed it, and we were happy to do it.
I love the thumbs up at him.
Oh, that's right. We got to go over to YouTube and click on the thumbs up. I'm number 19.
So,
and again, that's being a family-owned business. We could sit, we didn't have to go to a board of directors and our shareholders. We sat. I got the information. I went down and sat with Richard and Sherry and said, "Look, I think we ought to do this." And they said, "Heck yeah, we ought to do this. Whatever they need, you just take care of it." And we did.
all right, here's a question for you.
Sure.
Is Reading ever going to come out with electronic scale?
No.
I love that answer. I love that answer.
No, because there is no such thing as an electronic scale.
Balance. Okay.
Okay.
It's a balance, a scientific balance.
Yep. So the problem with electronic scales are they use something called a piezoelectric transducer that does not measure weight. It measures pressure.
That's right.
But there are other scientific scales that use a magnetic resonance.
Yep. And a weight as well.
Are...
There's a weight in there as well. There's a balance in there as well. Yes. Problem with that is the cost is such. And I mean, believe it or not, we actually use one of those scales to help calibrate our weights that go on our balance scales.
Right.
It's very accurate. It's very nice. It doesn't like dust. You better be in a dust-free room that doesn't have any ventilation or air moving through it to make it work right. But no, we'll stick with our balance. We'll stick with our number 2. It's magnetic dampened. It is still individually hand calibrated, which is why our balance scale versus all the other ones has got those 5/10 up and 5/10 down at the end of the poise. And Jim's seen this at SHOT Show. You can take the small weight and you can move it 2/10 and drop it, and you watch the poise go up 2/10 on the other end.
I've not been to SHOT Show, Robin, but I've been in your scale room.
Okay. Yep.
I've been in that room, and I actually looked at some of the equipment, and I actually saw some of the scales are actually in the process of being built.
Yep. They are individually hand calibrated. There's a little cup that sits underneath of the pan tray that it hangs from. And that cup has tiny, tiny, tiny amounts of weight that is added to it to calibrate the scale so that you have that 1/10 accuracy over on the end. So, I mean, the benefit of an electronic scale is, it tells you what it is. Well, if you're within 5/10 and you put it in the pan and put the pan on the rating scale, it tells you what it is.
I'm sorry, I just had to laugh because the piezoelectric measuring system it's not weight.
Nope. And you know where that really hurts you? When you're a happy retired gentleman living in South Florida, because there's a lot of great rifle ranges down there and there's good fun stuff to do, and you're sitting in your garage or your lanai or whatever you wish it to be down there, and you're weighing out charges on your electronic scale. And then at 3 o'clock, like every day at 3 o'clock, that big thunderstorm front rolls across the peninsula.
Right.
Once the air density and air pressure lowers, if you don't recalibrate that scale, you have to put a lot more powder in it to get to the same so-called weight that the digital scale is going to show you.
Oh, I agree. I mean,
Yeah.
I agree. I'm a user of electronic scales. Okay.
Yeah.
And I have mine in a very controlled environment.
Yep.
So I don't worry about so much, but I also know that my scales are, electronic magnetic resonance scales.
Right.
So I can't say scales. Balance.
Right.
It's a balance.
But that's not the $29 one that everybody buys at Bass Pro.
No, it's
There
not
you
a
go.
$29 one. It's
Yep.
a lot more money than $29.
Yep. Yep.
So,
I mean, have you seen the one the guys at Area 419 have one that's pretty neat? It's a lot of money, when it's inside of a glass enclosure, but it's a pretty neat one. And that's what I believe that's a lot like what you're talking about. It's a lot like what we use in our scale room for some of our calibration.
I haven't seen the Area 419, but then again, I've seen their press, and I can't see spending $1,200 on an aluminum press.
Understood. One of the things about the ready press is, remember, when you're dealing with high carbon steel and good cast iron, those two, any metallurgist or engineering will tell you, they are a natural bearing surface. They do not wear each other normally, naturally. You could introduce some junk that could cause it, but in general, they're not going to wear each other. Will ever Redding make a bullet puller? Probably not. Collet pullers are great, but nobody really wants to spend the money for them. And impact pullers are impact pullers. And there's so many of them out there right now that it's almost not a great idea to try to make something everybody else makes, because what are you going to do? You're going to make it cheaper, or you're going to make it a whole lot better and then charge a lot more for it. It's a tough market to get into. And, we're careful about the new products we bring out. Probably the last major new product we brought out was the slant bed concentricity gauge. And we were the first to really take a hard look at ergonomics on making it easier to have a more precise read on a concentricity gauge by angling the bed and making it so much easier to just use a finger instead of having to use your whole arm to rotate the case when it's in the gauge. So Redding will always look to do things that work better, that are easier to use, but really have to make a difference and really have to be beneficial to the shooter, not just a gadget or a gewgaw.
Here's a good one for you from Eric Smith. Redding dies are some of the best. What do you think about small base 308 dies for FAL M1A reloading and AR223 small base dies?
So I'll probably irritate some people.
Since when did we stop you?
A standard, well, never, but a standard Redding die is designed to provide you with a case, properly used, is designed to provide you with a case that will fit a SAMI min in every dimension chamber. Okay. I've never really run across an M1A or an FAL that have got a SAMI min chamber. They tend to be, auto guns tend to run chambers a little bit bigger because they're designed to function. I mean, yes, maybe an M1A super match that was built by a gunsmith and you spec'd it out and bought them the reamer, you might wind up with a nice tight chamber. Small base dies were created for bench rest guys who built chambers that were under SAMI minimum diameter. That's what small base die is for. They get used often, and unfortunately in some cases, on national match type guns, be they ARs or be they 308s, well 7.62 by 51s, because we wind up unfortunately with a lot of once fired machine gun brass that's left over. Machine guns run hot, they've got big chambers, and they tend to blow out that case body web junction area, which is a place that a normal die, even a small base die, can't really get to, because we're bumping into the shell holder at 125 thousandths thick. So what a small base die does is it's designed to size to leave you with a bullet, with a cartridge case that's smaller than needed to fit a SAMI Min chamber by some significant margin. But what it does is as we're running that down, it's pulling everything back in a little bit more, because it's dramatically undersizing the brass above that 125 thousandths point where the die and the cartridge and the shell holder interface, so that we set our headspace properly. That said, we're really beating the you-know-what out of the brass when we do that. We're cutting brass life dramatically because we're overly sizing it. And if you have a situation where you're sizing and having a problem getting that brass to run in your gun, size it again. Because one of the things that a lot of folks don't realize is, just like brass will continue to obtruate and get larger through 4 or 5 firings if we neck size, brass will get smaller if we size it more than once.
Mm-hmm.
So if we have to go from a large diameter to a relatively small diameter, we're going to have more spring back. The second time we size it, we're going from that somewhat smaller diameter to that small diameter, and we're going to have even less spring back. Same thing happens with guys that have got really tight chambers and have problems getting good datum line headspace off of a standard set of dies. Size it twice. Because if you wound up with somebody that you got the brass from that had a plus 10, which is SAMI Max, or maybe they had a plus 11 or 12, which is certainly, unfortunately, possible out there these days, and you've got a plus 2 or 3, well, you're pushing that shoulder way back. And when you pull the die off of it, it's going to expand a little bit. Obturation works in both directions. We think of it that, okay, so the case expands, it grabs the walls of the chamber, and then after the pressure's off, it relaxes and it comes back. Well, same thing happens when we size it. We're going to compress that way down, and then when we take that pressure off of it, it's going to expand a little bit. Well, if we size it the second time, it's not going to expand as much. And 99 times out of 100, when we have a customer calls customer service and they say, you know what, I can't push this shoulder back enough. Say, leave it alone for a day or two, push it back again, and let's see what happens. I'll be darned, it worked. And again, that's obturation.
Now, I'm going to tell you, I'm an old M1A shooter, and I use a small base die for another reason. I use it because I want the cartridge to lay down in the chamber at the bottom of the chamber as it chambers into the gun. It seems to help in accuracy instead of when I reuse brass again that has only been sized full length, that it fills the chamber nicely. I mean, and I know what my dimensions are on my gun. It's got a 1.642 chamber. That by having it lay down in the bottom of the chamber as it chambers, that I get a more consistent accuracy out of it.
I'm not going to disagree with you because you know it for a fact. The physics are opposite that, of course, which is why bench resters tend to neck size as little as possible, because they want the most conformal possible cartridge to chamber they can get, so that you have a better bore axis alignment when that cartridge is in the chamber. Now, granted, M1A is different, and but yeah, it may be that the smaller diameter allows it to get up into the shoulder better, more accurately and faster when the primer is struck and the case is pushed forward. There's reasons that it could be, but in reality, it's small base dies are tough on brass, and you will cut your brass life significantly. You cut your brass life significantly.
I get 2 loads out of it and I throw it away.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
But again, that's one of the neat things about our sport is everybody comes up with different ways to do things. Everybody has different measures of success, and what works for you might not work for everybody.
Mhm.
But I will tell you that the design of our dives is such that, properly used, properly executed through the sizing process and the reloading process, it should fit a SAMI minimum chamber. Again, we run into problems when we run into 240 and 249 stuff, that's coming off of military bases. It's being sold, bulk brass recycler kind of stuff.
Yeah.
because they're hot chambers, which means you're going to generate even more pressure. They're fat chambers because they're meant to go bang and they're meant to run, not necessarily be all that accurate. And, I used to get the giggles, and then I started to feel like I was mean sometimes, but I got a guy to call on the phone. And he goes, well, I've really got into F class and this and that. And I just got a bunch of really good brass. I bought a bunch of once fired Lake City off of some guy on the web. So how should I start? I said, slide the trash can close.
What?
Right. But that's the problem. That's the problem.
Yep.
Lake City brass, brand new, is pretty good stuff.
Good stuff. Yeah, it's
Yep.
brand new.
But after it's been through a 240 on a 110-degree day at Quantico, it's probably not so good anymore.
Yeah. No, non-fired Lake City, especially 223, is very, very good brass.
Yep.
People don't understand, but as soon as it's been fired, most of the time it's through 249 and it's junk.
Yep. Exactly.
And 308 is even worse.
Yep. Coming out of a 240, it's real ugly.
Well, I'm from the old days, so it used to be out of a 60.
Yeah, out of a 60. Actually, the 60 probably ran hotter because the barrel was harder to change and you didn't do it as often. So,
Robin, here's going to change the topic a little bit, if you don't mind. I put a new comment up. This comment comes from Iceland, from a gentleman by the name of Oder Sigurdsson. Wow, what an excellent podcast. Thank you so much, Mr. Sharpless, for your time, thoughts, and explanations. Thank you, Reloading Podcast guys, for doing this for us out here. Greetings from Iceland.
We have a good dealer in Iceland. We enjoy Iceland, and we're happy to be sold in Iceland. And so thank you so much for reaching out and saying that, because you know what? That's the great thing. Our shooting sports are a worldwide tradition. And with the freedom that has come to Eastern Europe as well, we've seen that tradition grow a lot in the last 8 or 10 years. So it's nice.
Amen.
Yep.
Wow. What a great show.
I enjoyed it. Always enjoy it. Well, Jim, I always enjoy you guys. Every time I've been on, it's been a real pleasure, and it's been a lot of fun.
Robin, I'm not trying to get you to sign off either. Okay, I just can't believe what a great show we have tonight.
Well, you guys must be important because I'm missing Oak Island to stay on, but that's okay. I'll watch it on demand tomorrow night or something. So,
well, the nice thing about that is then you can fast forward past commercials.
Yeah, I'm kind of an Oak Island junkie. I think this year they might actually find something. Who knows? Maybe.
Hey, Jim, did Spudman 76's question get asked?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Robin addressed it directly.
Okay.
He picked it up without even me highlighting it.
Some of them are popping up on the bottom of the screen, so I was trying to answer those.
That would be me highlighting it, like with Mr. Sigurdsson's comment.
Yes.
That's me doing that.
Very nice.
And Mike has the same rights.
Well, again, it's always a good time to be on with you folks, and Jim, I always enjoy it when we have chats offline when things are happening and need to happen. And I'm willing to come on whenever you guys think it would be beneficial or whenever you need me.
Well, this is kind of a special show. It's our last show of the year, and it's the pre-Christmas show. And you can tell me in the Santa Claus hat and all that goofy Tommy Rotten.
It's
there we get to see you again.
Yeah,
it's wonderful.
Yeah.
I know one thing, Robin, I'm excited to see is I was kind of looking through your catalog while you were talking there. Some of the old milsurp cartridges, for instance, 8x52 are Siamese.
Yep.
there's very limited companies that actually produce anything similar to that. So I have to use like the cartridge conversion book to kind of look, okay, what die do I have to use, the size of the brass? But being that you already have it on the custom catalog, that's nice to see.
And he
Over
says
the
he
years,
probably has it in stock. That's even better.
Yeah. I mean, over the years, we've done so many earlier and older Milsurp cartridges. One that's very interesting is our Nambu handgun cartridge, which is interesting because we do it as a steel die because it has to be, because there are contours and a shoulder-like part of that case that most of the American dies don't give you. And so well, you know, I mean, hey, it's like, guys, it's like carbide dies for the 30 carbine. What diameter do you pick? How much of the case do you want to have wrong? I mean, it's a fully tapered case, and you can't do a fully tapered carbide that long. Doesn't happen.
Well, you're the only one that makes a 9mm tapered
Carbide.
case.
Yeah,
Carbide.
Our carbide is tapered. Yep.
Right. Everybody wants a
full
straight
length
wall.
tapered. Yep. That's why the 9mm costs a little bit more, because they're a lot harder to make.
Right.
So yeah.
And that's why most people don't understand, as they reload, they run into problems with a wasted, it looks like a narrow waisted cartridge in 9mm, because they're using a straight walled die to size their 9mm brass.
Well, years ago, up until recently, we used to make the dual rings for that same reason. And unfortunately, the dual rings are a wonderful, wonderful die. And I personally have a few of them because they work so well. Problem is, the carbide's the expensive part. If you put two of them in, it gets even more expensive. And because those two have to be perfectly concentric, now they have to be ground perfect on the outside, where, see, you can have a little bit of concentricity run out on the outside of a carbide insert, because the case is going to center in it anyway. But when you have two of them that have to line up perfectly, all of a sudden the carbide costs go through the roof. And if you're loading 44 mag, if you're loading 45 long colt, those kinds of things, if you find a dual ring case, buy it, love it, and be lucky, because we're not making them anymore. The price was just so much that it became difficult to make them and sell based on the price of the carbides. And but they work beautifully. I mean, we have our new next gens, which have got a longer ring in them, a la like the 9mm, but they can't do the same on like a 45 Colt, on a long Colt. You can't do that much carbide, but they work very, very well. Why does Ready not put vent holes in the dies? Because a properly designed die doesn't need a vent hole.
I love these simple answers.
Had a funny, and I will not name the company, but it's a fellow of mine that was president of another reloading equipment company that called me on the phone with just that question. Hey, we're trying to save money. Do you think we can get away without having the vent hole in the die? Well, yeah, you just design the die right, and you don't have that problem. The vast majority today of dents that are occurring in cases are a function of really bad brass. And if you're not doing I'm doing everything wrong with too much goop in there, causing a hydraulic dent, what you're going to find out is, if you were to take that case and look at where the dent is in the shoulder and measure the case neck, you're going to find you've got a thin spot in the case neck directly above that. And what happens under compression is, when we're sizing that down and pushing the shoulder back all at one time, ideally, the case being very uniform is going to move back in uniformity. If we've got a very thin spot, let's say a variance of 3 to 3.5 thousandths in that neck wall, that variance goes down the whole side of the case, by the way. You don't get run out in a neck wall based on the fact that the case is perfect up to the neck. It's because when the cup was dropped in for the first draw at the brass maker, the cup was off center slightly. Correct. And so those dents, if you've got a dent you can't figure out and get rid of, get your Redding case neck gauge out, or get your ball mic or tube mic out and measure it. And you're going to find out that just above that on the neck's going to be considerably thinner. And if you try to squeeze something back and push it down, if there's a thin spot, that's going to cave in. And that's where it comes from. And really no hole, no vent is going to do anything about that. So
I'm a big fan of your body dies.
thank you. They are a wonderful tool.
And I do multiple process in sizing. So I will use the body die to size the body and then move and then bump the shoulder and size the neck with a bushing.
Mm-hmm.
And then being anal retentive as I am, I use a pin gauge to make sure the neck is straight.
Yep.
It's just
nope, that's absolutely all good. Richard Beebe, who's the fellow that's the president of Reading and designed most of the stuff and held the patents on a lot of these good toys when they still had patents on them, is a firm believer of that. He uses a neck die. He uses a bushing die of 2000s, and he pulls one of our carbide buttons back through because that button is 1.5 thousandths. So we wind up basically opening it back up 1/2 thousandth. Not very much wear and tear on the neck itself, but what we're really doing at that point is we're dealing with the fact that when you OD size, any anomalous part of that neck gets pushed in against the bullet.
right.
And we want to have a good clean pull, so we don't really want to overwork the neck. But if we're only talking about 1/2 thousandths, what we're really doing is almost burnishing the inside of that neck with carbide. And by doing that, we wind up with a really nice, clean interior, good straight sides, and a nice pull. Because remember that carbide button is free floating on our carbide button is actually free floating. So
Not locked in there like about 99% of the other dies are.
correct. Our steel buttons, they serve two purposes. They actually also hold the decap rod in, but the carbides are free floating on the shaft of the decap rod.
One of our favorite troublemakers out there. Yeah, I'd use the term favorite seriously. He's put a comment up. No love for the Big Boss.
Love the Big Boss. It's a great press. Big Boss 2 is actually even more fun because it's cleaner and gets rid of the primers for you. And it's a wonderful, big, tough press. The T7 uses the same bottom end linkage. It has just as much power. It has just as much ability, except it has 7 stations in the turret.
I couldn't resist that one.
No, that's a good one. I know Big Boss is a great press. And like I said, I have the Ultra Mag because you know what? I've got a bad shoulder. And when I'm full length sizing 338 lapel, it's really nice to have all that the Ultra Mag has to give me and take care of my arm.
Very good. And by the way, Spudman really enjoyed your response about these properly designed dies in the no vent hole. He even gave you an LOL. Thank you.
Well, thank you. That's very kind. But yeah, it's really what it comes down to. I mean, if the die is designed properly, it's not going to do that. And if you use your lube properly.
Another one of our favorite mates from down under, Hunt Shoot Off-Road Rob Trout. He thinks it's maybe the hole's actually a lube vent.
That's certainly possible.
Couldn't resist.
Yeah, there are. Well, we're fortunate that we have a diverse group of people in our sport, and some of them have one eye and are named Lefty.
Or lucky.
To my Australian guys, my favorite restaurant is still the Oak across the bay from Sydney. In Sydney, favorite restaurant in the world is the Oak.
Okay, I like that. How about the panel? Sharon, do you got any questions for Mr. Sharpless here?
Oh, Robin, please. My goodness. Okay. Well, you know what?
It's soaking all the knowledge in.
Oh, good. Good.
Mike, over to you, bud.
Okay. I Appreciate you coming on, Robin. Thanks. So,
Always a pleasure.
Sorry I
guys.
wasn't here
A
for
lot of
most
fun.
of it. I was kind of paying attention to part of it, but I had a 4-H meeting that I had to be in on for STEM planning with the University of Wisconsin on the projects we're going to be doing. So
neat.
Yep. Yeah, it's kind of nice. The UW, we've got a UW extension person that's tied into the UW really well and actually getting people involved. So
very, very nice. That's great.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Something that hasn't happened in a long time. So
good.
So
Just because he's on the left coast over there, I mean,
Oh boy, Mike muted himself to keep from cussing Paul.
no, actually, I had to cough.
I know.
Yeah, I'm just outside 75 square miles of insanity surrounded by reality. So,
I lived in Lansing, New York, which is the town just north of Ithaca that's primarily all professors. And that's the Ithaca bumper sticker. And it does say Ithaca, New York, 10 square miles surrounded by reality.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yep.
And people would come every time we'd have fun shooting sporting clays at my house. The sheriff's department would come around and go, "Well, your neighbors are worried again." Well, I own a lot further than the shot can go, and I own to the top of the ridge, and it's all posted, so nobody should be back there. Thank you. You want to shoot a couple of rounds? Because I had a sporting clay set up in my back.
Nice.
I like that.
Yep.
I'm speechless.
Obviously, you're muttering. You're
Jorgen Rangen, you at it again, you connecting crazy man.
Oh my God.
Hogs, heifers, highballs, and hippies. Been a while since I said the 4-H pledge. Oh, that's a good one. I like that. Very good.
That's awesome.
You realize, and I'll give another little quick Central New York thing. The funniest thing in the world is that Cornell University, for all of its Ivy left wing hating everything that we like, is also the land grant university for the state of New York and the headquarters for the state 4-H. And Cornell Cooperative Extension Service actually pays for and runs the New York State 4-H shooting sports group.
That is awesome.
Oh my God.
Yep. They're based out of Boston. They're based out of Boston Spa in the eastern part of the state, but they are part of the Cornell Cooperative Extension Service.
Oh, that is awesome.
Yep. They do a big banquet they just brought the first one back since COVID, but they do a big banquet fundraiser every year to help. And we go down and donate some stuff. And I always make sure I go down and buy lots of tickets and get in the raffles because there's always some fun stuff there. Yeah. So it's a good time. It's a good time.
Oh yeah.
Up at Lake George.
Yeah, I started out 4-H. My kids joined, and then I got suckered into being on the shooting sports board.
Nice.
And that's how I jumped into 4-H leadership, and I went from there to when I switched hours. I couldn't do the shooting sports board because shooting sports is year round and always stuff going on, whether it's setting up meets or setting up stuff for the fair or just setting up training times for the youths. And so I couldn't commit that much time anymore, but I was able to jump into the position I'm in now, which is department chair for mechanical science and electricity, because there wasn't really a lot going on. And now I started to add a little bit. Nice. And then we got the new extension person, and she's just running with it.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
So it's awesome that we've got all these new opportunities.
Nice. Nice.
Yep. But yeah, shooting sports is huge. In Dane County, especially for 4-H. So it's pretty awesome. So
we're lucky in New York to have a very good shooting sports program because remember, New York isn't the city.
No.
And the rest of the state, other than right around Rochester and right around Buffalo, and right around Syracuse. Well, Syracuse has a big shooting program, but it's not 4-H.
Yeah.
But anyway, no, we're very fortunate that way. We've got a great group of guys that run it, and we're happy that we can participate and be part of it, and really an enjoyable situation. So,
well, thank you for supporting 4-H shooting sports.
absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. I was on a personal note, I was fortunate many years ago when I was on the board of NRA that I was part of the group that got 4-H and NRA instructors cross-qualified, because 25 years ago, the instructors were not cross-qualified to be able to work with each other. And we were able to work with 4-H and got 4-H onto our youth committee. And we were really lucky to get that done, because it opened up tremendous opportunities for 4-H to have that many more instructors available.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and that getting that really helped kick off. It got 4-H serious about training their instructors better. So, because it used to be whoever you could find, or maybe your local hunter safety instructor, and then when that all happened, that really pushed forward the actual training program, and there's actually a instructor training program now.
Yeah, I'm guessing that was around. We got that qualification cross-quals done, I think, in 96 or 97, somewhere in that time frame.
Yeah, I started in 4-H 2008, I think.
Yep. Yeah.
So 2007, somewhere around there.
That was right after I made noise, and after 50 some years, we got the name changed from the NRA Junior Programs Committee to Youth Programs Committee, because no kid wanted to be called a junior. Yeah, granted, they're still called juniors in small bore, but there was no kid in America that wanted to be junior anything at that point in time.
Oh, no.
The other thing is, back then they didn't have a shotgun program, and I was lucky to be able to push through and get the bar and badge program for shotguns for the first time in the history of the NRA 20, 23, 24, 25 years ago.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well done. Thank you.
Sure. Well, shotguns are shooters too.
That's right.
You sure about that?
Yep. If you're a kid that grew up in New Jersey where you weren't allowed to have a rifle, shotguns were shooters too. When I was a kid, you were allowed to have buckshot for deer, and you were allowed to, but there was no rifle for anything.
I'm an old trap shooter. I'm
there you go.
giving Mike a hard time over there. And then there's the one muted over on the far side there. She needs a Parazzi anyway.
Well, there you have it. They are quite stylish.
Yeah, I also don't have the same time
have Paul
span
money.
on this earth. Paul money, close to retirement.
Ooh.
I didn't make wise choices and invest or marry rich. So yeah.
Well,
I would love to shoot one day though.
We could work that out.
Joe says Santa's pretty little helper.
Thanks.
very nice. Very nice. Very nice.
Oh my
Jeez.
God, the neighborhood just went to hell. Chris Sharp is in town.
All right,
Yeah.
there was a question here. Can you highlight Vemigan's and they get his at 9:21 p.m. Jim?
Sure. Hang on, Paul. There it is. Thoughts on, okay. Is that it, Paul?
Yep.
Nobody's really seen them yet, except in photos. The 419 guys are great. They're good guys. They're smart guys. What they're looking at doing on this, on the sizing die with the micrometer to basically set the shoulder is intriguing. Be interested to see how it all works out. Right now, you have to have the ability to run an 1 1/4 die in the press, and they've yet to come out with the adapter shell holder that will actuate it, working off of a standard shell holder and not off of their 419, off of their zero press.
Okay. So it's
and
still a big question then.
In concept, it's neat. They do good stuff. I think there are a bunch of really bright young guys that are doing some really neat things out there. I think conceptually it's good. I'm not really sure how it outstrips
our Redding competition shell holders, because you've got that ability to adjust shoulder bump that way. And you can, of course, do it with cam over. So you're taking all that 5, 6, 7 thousandths worth of play out of the press and coming up with a real dead nuts, so to speak, bump that's going to be as repeatable as the brass will allow. Because remember, no two cartridge cases are the same. Much as we'd like to think so, they aren't.
Amen.
So I think it's a neat concept. And anytime somebody's coming out with something new and they're challenging, there we go. You gotta love them. I mean, it's one of the least expensive things that give you really hard quality ability to set a standard that stays there.
And they're so easy to use. So I mean, that's the thing. No sitting here dinking around with the die and tweaking a little here, tweaking a little there. You just change out your shell holder.
Yep.
So
they're one of those things that when you buy your first set, you have to have a set for everything you're serious about.
Yep.
Usually 1s, 10s, and 6s at least.
Yeah.
So
Michael Dunn dies for $500. No thanks. I understand that, but remember there are dies that are more expensive. I think Jack Warner makes a set of $700 dies. So
I'm going to be honest with you. I think our catalog retail next year on our elite, some of our Series 3 elites are going to be about $700, but that's not what they actually sell for in the real world.
Right.
We're back into stuff that's, they're bushing dies. They've got an awful lot of stuff going on. There's a competition cedar in the set with all that happens there. And being that category 3, it's because they're small numbers.
Right.
Improvement between elite. Okay. So the Master Hunter set, you've got a couple things going on with the Master Hunter set. One, the Redding full-length die is always finished with a single piece reamer, so our concentricity is really very, very good. They're after heat treat, they are individually hand polished internally, and the Master Hunter full-length die comes with that free floating carbide expander button. The real joy of the Master Hunter set is obviously it comes with the full-blown competition seating die, which evolved and was designed for bench rest competition. And since the vast majority of really high quality hunting bullets these days don't have a canalore in them anyway, the fact it doesn't have a crimp doesn't make any difference. We're going to deal with neck tension to size it and hold it.
Thank you, Robin. Appreciate
You're
you
welcome.
addressing that.
Very welcome.
Here's one sort of tongue in cheek. I don't think it's meant seriously, but we'll highlight it for a few seconds anyway.
When you reload lots of straight wall cases, you don't have a lot of shoulder problems. Well, I hope not anyway. If you have shoulder problems on a straight wall, you've got bigger issues.
Yep. Well, you might get wasp waist problems because obviously that one dimension tends not to work so well top to bottom on even most what we consider straight wall cases today. Yep. And remember, everybody, a quality manufacturer's got to design around SAMI minimums plus the SAMI minimum for the wall thickness. So that means that we've got that carbide ring has to be pretty darn tight to do what it needs to do, and certainly much tighter than anything but the bullet retention section. We can't really call it the neck, so we'll call it the fancy bullet retention section of that straight wall case. And that's really what the old dual rings did. They addressed the entire case to one dimension, which was to fit a minimum chamber, and then they addressed the portion which holds the bullet to size that enough to certainly hold the bullet, depending, even with a minimum SAMI neck wall thick or wall thickness at that portion of the case.
It's what we used to call bullet pull.
Correct.
On a straight wall case.
Yep.
And people that are reloading things like the 460, the 500 Smith & Wesson, are having issues with it because they can't get enough bullet pull on their case to hold the bullet in. Because
Sure.
they don't get it, they can't get it reduced enough at the top of the case to really grab a hold of that bullet by the case.
And that's why when guys are serious on 460s and 500s, we recommend they buy the steel die, because the steel die has the variety of dimensions inside of it to address that, where a carbide can't, because you're dealing with a one-dimensioned ring.
Very good.
Not all Nitro Expresses are straight walled.
Question for you on the T7.
Sure.
On the replacement brain fart. The replacement turret.
The turret heads? Yep.
Yeah. Are those only 7/8, or do you make?
Nope, they're only 7/8.
Okay.
Yep, they're only 7/8. And the key there, obviously, is each turret comes with its own bushing.
Yep.
And the bushing basically establishes the clearance necessary for that particular turret.
Yeah.
So that we're tipping into square, not tipping out of square when we put pressure on the one side.
Okay.
Yep. All right, I have a good one for you. Here's one that guys keep your eyes out for at the gun shows. Prior to the T7, Ready made the Model 25, which was our first, the original 6-station turret. But the magical one of those to find is the T7, or is the T20, it's the 25 with a 2-speed bottom end.
What?
What's interesting is that doesn't have the big action bars. It's more like an older style press where you simply have, you've got the ram, and you've got a piece that actuates the ram. You pull down the one side, the other side pushes up the ram. You've got a hole through the press. But some of them were made with a 2-speed bottom piece that allowed you to change the stroke and reduce the pressure. So when you're running handgun stuff, you could actually move it so less pull of the operating handle made the ram run further and faster. So if you're doing small handgun stuff and you don't need all that, you weren't having to stroke through the full stroke. You were short stroking, but you were still getting the full stroke on the ram. So that's a fun thing to look out for. There were not a lot of them made. They work very, very well. And you simply take the bolt out of the bottom and you move it to one hole or the other to have the full power stroke, or to have the lighter stroke, which is faster, much easier to do handguns on. Yes, that's the third press that's on my bench down there. Well, actually, there's one other press on my bench, but that's a Star Universal. So that I'm sorry, but it's the only progressive press that I truly can love.
Yes, yes, I know.
And everybody says, well, why don't you make one of those today? And I said, because it would probably be about $12,000 by the time you finished making it. You look at the castings and the machining in that thing. It was designed in the 20s and 30s when, well,
Yeah,
you could do that sort of thing.
but it was still expensive back then.
Oh, gosh, yeah. I mean, I think in the 70s, when they were really kind of just working their way out of the business, there were a couple $1,000s in 1970s money.
Mm-hmm.
And the Universal, of course, is the one that you could actually change calibers on. I mean,
Right.
The standard Stars were one cartridge only. So, but the Universal did have the ability to change the dies and change the shell plates out. So now you know my secret. There's a non-retting press on my bench.
All the different presses that have been made, and we look at all the, there have been quite a few progressive presses made back in the 80s. But we still end up going back to a single stage press to do our real precision work.
Years ago, and it wound up being on the, oh, okay, I'll do this one in just a second. Years ago, it was interesting because there was a good article that actually appeared years ago on the Brian Enos forum about the T7. And it was for action pistol shooters. And the guy's missive was entitled Game Day Ammo. And he talked about how he used his Dillon to load everything for all of his training, for all of his practice and all that. And when it came down to game day, when it came down to money on the line, he loaded his ammo on the T7 because it's still quicker than a single stage, but he knew he had a level of precision that he wasn't going to get off of any progressive at that time. Favorite non-Redding product. This is a funny story. My favorite non-Redding product goes back to the beginning of me learning to hand load, and I still use them today. And if I ever see one at the gun show, I buy them because Lee doesn't make them anymore for a variety of reasons, mostly dealing with lawyers and product liability. But it is the original Lee hand primer, sometimes described in the media as the handheld Claymore. It has such a wonderful feel. It works so well. My thumb likes it. There you go. My thumb likes it. I can feel that bottom so nicely every time. And the funny part is when I wrote my book, I called Lee and I said, hey, I need some high res photos for a book I'm writing. I gave him my name, and the poor girl in the whatever department, PR girl, was like, I'm sorry, I can't do that for you. I'm going to have to call someone else. I said, why? They said, well, you're the vice president, you're the senior vice president, the executive vice president at Redding Reloading Equipment. We know who you are. And I said, yeah, and I'm writing a book and I'm highlighting things that you make that I like that, we don't make. For instance, I wanted a picture of their little C-frame press because it was the only C-frame press still made in America. So it took about 2 weeks for them to internally decide that I wasn't stealing trade secrets from Lee so I could get the photographs to put in my book. And they appear in my book, and complimentary things are said about Lee in my book. So there you go. But no, the original one is my favorite. It just has the best feel. Sadly, because it's plastic, I've worn a couple of them out in my lifetime. And like I say, if I see one at a gun show or a yard sale or a flea market, I usually try to buy it if it's in good shape, because
it's called a Lee
if I'm
Auto
lucky enough to wear another 2 or 3 out in my lifetime, I'll live long and prosper.
Sorry, I didn't mean to overwrite you, Robin.
Oh yeah,
but anyway, it's called a Lee Auto Prime. I love my Lee Auto Prime. I went to the new stuff, and I wish I could get another Lee Auto Prime. I have to go to a gun show or two, see if I can find some of the
find them once in a while. You find one new in the box for $15, $16, and I buy it.
You bet.
I think that's more than I paid for my first one new, I think, but things change. And I've got such a big selection of the little special shell holders that go in it, so I just keep using them.
Yep. So do I. I bought the whole card. But anyway, that comment Robin just addressed is from one of our crazy Canuckians, Jorgen Reagan. Thank you, Jorgen.
Happy to do.
Hey, Robin, on that Redding 25.
Yes, sir.
Is it basically just the part where the handle goes? Is there basically just 2 different mounting holes?
Yep, there's 2 holes, not where the handle goes, but where the pivot point is. So you see where there's a pivot point. You can change the pivot point, and it gives you 2 different types of compound and less compound leverage. And when you go to less compound leverage, the ram goes a lot faster with a lot less press stroke, with a lot less stroke.
There's one on eBay for
That's
$250.
Cool. I mean, if you're doing a lot of handgun stuff, you don't need all that compound leverage, and it speeds things up very nicely.
Yeah.
Of course, it's a little older. It is still of the tilt back mode. It's not a straight up and down one. So it does tilt back slightly, which was all the rage probably in the 1950s with a lot of reloading presses. They tilted back a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah.
A lot of them, a lot.
Yeah. It's funny. We have people call off quite often and say, Well, I've got one of those T6s. Can I put a T7 turret head on it? I said, well, you've got a Model 25, and no, the diameters aren't even close. So.
Yep, looks like there's one on eBay right now for sale.
They're a cool press, and and functionally, it still makes sense what it does. It doesn't have the power of a modern press by any means, but that idea that you can speed it up. Basically, you can decrease the power and increase the speed of stroke on the ram, and basically, you don't have to go as far with your arm to load handgun.
So you won't want to make it anymore?
Oh, we haven't made that press in many, many years. The T7.
I know that.
Oh, yeah.
Why not?
Well, it's funny because today everybody wants the heavy compound leverage, and you can't do that with that base design, the bottom end design. It's dated to its time. Still good press, still all cast iron, all American made, etc. But it's it's
too much of a niche press.
You're not gonna have as much fun trying to load a 458 Win Mag on it that's blown out and needs to be full length sized.
Most people that I know of don't reload 458 anymore because they got too much money that they can afford to buy, the $120 worth of 20 shots.
Well, you just want to. I still do because I haven't done it for years. My knees are shot and I haven't been hunting. But I used to have friends in Pennsylvania, and I would download my 458 Win Mags with lead to go deer hunting in PA with, just to say I went and killed a deer in Pennsylvania with my 458 Win Mag. Basically, it was a belted 45-70 at that point.
Talk about overkill. Oh,
well, it kind of had one of these arcs
I
like
know.
this,
You said it loaded it down. I got it.
Yeah. 7-1. Okay. Yep. If I'm remembering correctly, that is the Redding press where the handle and all the operating is actually above where the die would be. We have one on our display shelf of older items. I did get really lucky. I recently, my gun dealer locally, who's like my little brother, somebody brought in a box full of old junk, and there happened to be one of the very earliest Redding Model 1 scales in the box. And what's neat about it is the Redding is not cast into the cast iron base. It's actually on a little stamped nickel plate with red lettering in it. And what's cool about it is Redding was incorporated in, I think, 1956. And this is prior to that because it's marked as the Redding Company, not Redding or Redding Hunter Incorporated. So that's my oldest Redding scale in my pile of Model 1s.
I gave my son a Model 1 that somebody gave me. You're the one that told me how old that scale was.
Yep.
Oil dampened.
Okay, that's nice. That's the deluxe. This one was still this is the still, you're going to grow some gray hair waiting for it to settle out. Non-dampened. So.
Yeah, I've got one of those.
The
brown ones that are oil dampened.
The oil dampened scale was a Model 1, and they went back in and changed the casting slightly. And between the two ears that hold the bearings for the beam to actually move on, there is a cup cast in that you would fill with 30 weight oil, and there is a little, for lack of a better word, there's a little paddle, like a little teeny canoe paddle, hooked to the bottom of the actual beam. And what it would do is it would cause the beam, dragging through the oil would cause the beam to settle out more quickly.
Oil dampened.
I'd show you, but it's out in a box in the garage. So I've got one. I'll remind me next week, Jim, and I'll dig it out, or next show, and I'll dig it out and show everybody.
They're very cool. There's Redding has had a lot of innovation throughout its life. I mean, 77 years is a long time. 1946. Started in Virgil, New York in a chicken coop, one-man show. And in 49, moved over the hill to Cortland, about, 8 or 9 miles. And we've been in that same location ever since.
There's a question, but perhaps I think we'll wait till after we're off the air about Redding. Redding themselves.
All right.
I don't want you to release any non-public information.
Okay, fair enough. Hand calibration, basically, on our scale. The Model 2 scale is still the last hand calibrated scale. And if you are to look, most all the other scales simply have a point to match on to say, at this given weight, on the small and the large weight, we're there. The Redding goes up 5/10 and down 5/10 accurately by the position of the beam. So that's the difference. That's the superior part. You know, on another scale, if you're not right on the line, you have no idea what the weight actually is unless you start moving stuff around. On ours, if you're not right on the line, you're either, you know, it may say you're 2/10 heavy or 3/10 heavy or 2/10 light or 5/10 light, because all of that, through the calibration, all of that is available to you by looking at the scale. Yep, there you got. Yep.
That question came from Jorgen Rangan. Thank you, Jorgen, again.
Thank you very much for putting that up.
Well, we do get into some eclectic stuff here. If you don't mind, Robin, I'm going to throw one up there. Might throw you a left-hand curve from Paul
Yes.
Wild.
Redding did make scales for RCBS at one time.
Wow.
And there are also Model 1s out there that have herders cast into them as well, because Redding made them for herders way, way, way back when.
We got a lot of starred comments tonight. Okay, here's one that I thought was interesting. From a gentleman calling himself Mr. Hornet. Is it possible to get competition dies made for 308 Norma Magnum, 22K Hornet, or 6.5 by 06/06 AI?
Now we're back.
Okay. Okay, the comment I just highlighted that I've asked Robin to look at is it possible to get competition dies made for 308 Norma Mag, 22K Hornet, or 6.5 by 06 AI?
Yes and no. Yes, from the perspective that we still make custom competition dies, but we won't make less than 25 at a time, simply because of the setup that is involved. And there's still, even at 25, they're very, very expensive. The K Hornet's interesting because, and the 6506 AI, we could, here's the thing about a Redding competition seating die. That internal sliding sleeve is specifically not hardened. The rest of the die is. And that's done so you could take a reamer and make an AI out of a standard cartridge that is equivalent to it. So we could, you know, there is that possibility to do that on something like K Hornet in particular. You take a 22 Hornet comp seater and go in with your chamber reamer and change the sliding sleeve to fit your chamber. And we have lots of folks that do that specifically. You know, the other thing is to find something very similar but slightly smaller, and don't mess with the neck, because you can't mess with the neck. But you can go in with a chamber reamer and you can clean it up and you can rechamber an existing something with your chamber reamer inside of the sliding sleeve, because again, it's not heat treated and hardened, and then make your cartridge out of something else that is similar and yet has smaller dimensions. But we don't want to mess with the necks, because that's you've seen how tight that is. When we have a little bit of fun, and I'll take the sliding sleeve out, and then I'll take the seater and push it down, and the air pressure shoots it back out of the top of the die.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to ever mess with that, because there's a lot of work to get it to that point. But changing the body and shoulder is not a problem.
Oh, we've had this issue before from the gentleman calling himself 76 Highboy Reloading. My high beam type scale never requires batteries.
He's a good man. He's a good man. He's a good friend, longtime friend.
You must have warning that you were coming on, Robin. Thank you.
Absolutely. And it's funny too with the guys that will do that. And we'll get the occasional guy that calls in and we'll tell them the story about, we got to be careful because if you have a major air density change because a thunderstorm comes through, et cetera. And we've had guys that say, oh, no, you don't have to worry. So I use my electronic scale all the time. But like every 5 or 6, I go back and check it against, on my model, on my number 2. So I know that it's right.
Yeah. Spudman 76, my beam scale requires glasses. God.
There's a way around that, guys, just so you know. It's to take a piece of Scotch tape and a wire and have it extend past it, but not touch the poise. It will allow you to see the lines and match up with the poise on it.
Uh-oh.
Oh, God. Spudman 76, his comment was, my beam scale required glasses, and Jordan Ragged just slid into it with both feet. He thinks Spudman must feel silly taking his scale to the optometrist.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Oh, God, you guys are terrible. I love it.
Everybody's having fun tonight by the looks of it.
Hell of a good show tonight, I'll tell you. It's kind of a present to the reloading community out there.
Nice way to go into Christmas, isn't it? Everybody's laughing and having a good time.
In reality wise, they're all being pretty good tonight, so, otherwise there'd be a lot of tearing everybody up and down. So they're just getting worked into it now. The acorn must be flowing.
Robin, please address this question from our favorite troublemaker.
Boy, that's a tough one. I know what goes into building our presses as opposed to we do not assemble our presses. We build them. As they say, things are honed to fit. Things are set on the ground. You're going to have a level of precision, accuracy, and durability in a Redding press that's hard to find elsewhere. But by the same token, if you put dies in that press that aren't the greatest things in the world, you're not going to wind up with good cases. It's funny. Both of them are going to be equally as important. If we wind up with a really super good accurate press and we've got dies that, let's say, were not made with a one-piece reamer at the end where we could have some variation in concentricity in different parts of the die, and I hate to say that, but it happens sometimes. Or if we wind up with really good Redding dies that are made on that one-piece reamer and that are really just right where they need to be, and now you've got a ram that's got X thousandths of slop in it, you've got a problem there as well. It comes down to the ability to do the same thing every time in every way. Jim's heard me give my spiel about the 3 magic words of everything to do with hand loading, internal ballistics, and external ballistics, which are the 3 words: identify, quantify, and mitigate.
Yep.
Identify a variable, come up with a methodology to quantify that variable. Once we quantify the variable, now we can develop a mitigation strategy to reduce the impact that variable has. So that means if we've got a die that's not quite in spec, that's a problem. If we've got a ram that has some slop in it, we're not going to do the same thing every time. So that's really the magic. And here's the last one. Here's one I'll mess with you guys on a little bit. And that is this. The one thing that the industry talks about all the time and they tout, and yet in reality, the methodology we currently have has no way to deal with it, and that's neck tension. Neck tension is expressed as a diameter. Oh, I've got 2,000ths neck tension. Okay. So that means you're putting a bullet in a hole that's 2,000 smaller, but you've done nothing to account for the variances in metallurgy from one case to another of how much tension, how much hold is actually exerted.
Yeah.
And that's a place that
we're trying on. We're trying on this though. We're sitting there. There's more people are becoming annealers and trying to get the brass to a position where one brand of brass, in one lot number, hopefully the metallurgy is sufficient all the way through it that we can come up with a way of determining our bullet pull by diameter.
Yep. And we're getting better at it, but there's a way to do it. But the problem right now is one of the tools involved costs too much to do it. And in the true spirit of all great bench rest things, it's a way to throw away a lot of stuff. Because I'm not saying it's a destructive situation, but it's a situation that will allow you to sort because you're not really going to be able to change it. And about 5 years ago, I came up with a way to do it. We came up with a way to do it, and it all works. But the problem is right now, one of the components is just still so expensive that it wouldn't work. You're looking at a product that would have to probably resell for $750 or $800, but you would actually be able to know what bullet pull is for real, case to case. But anyway, that's one I just love to throw out to people.
We're getting though at the point where $700 isn't
well,
that much of a deal.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, you're sitting there. We're talking. People are talking about $500 dies here, $1,200 presses.
Yep.
$1,000 scales.
It's a limited market, but it's one of those next things that we really don't have an efficient, effective way to quantify that yet. And once we can quantify it, unfortunately, the mitigation strategy is to remove them from the pile, or if you're a bench rest guy, sort 5 at a time that are all very close. So you're going to, again, it's a matter of group size. It's not a matter of where on the paper it happens.
Right.
But yeah. And, but there is, that's one thing that we've not come up with an inexpensive, efficient way to deal with that yet. And
I don't think you're going to ever find an inexpensive, efficient way to do it.
True.
It's going to be an expensive way to do it. And people are going to have to understand, even with the best brass that you can buy on the market, that you're going to have variations in the metallurgy through the lots that you're dealing with. And you're going to have to make sacrifices now,
Right. It's going to be better, but it's not going to be perfect. And really that's what we look to do. And then we look to mitigate those variabilities, because the more mechanically we can solve, the worse we can be here and still be effective at what we're trying to accomplish. It's really how perfect can we make the gun, the round, the wind, the computer, everything else, so that the frailties of the human,
the jerk behind the trigger.
Well, I usually call it the nut behind the trigger, but yeah.
It's the jerk behind the trigger. Yeah. Okay.
So, but that's really what we look to do. We work at all this so that we can mitigate as many variables. We can tighten everything up. We can make everything as exact as it can be, because we're human. God did not make us perfect, so we will never be exact. We can work at things and we can drill and train ourselves and create muscle memory, but it's still not perfect.
We try.
Right. We do. We
try. Some of us even get close. Right, Jim?
Well, there are those magical days when everything does what you hope it will, including you. Mm-hmm. And they're wonderful when they happen. Many of us live a lifetime for those days. We have a few.
Oh, I understand.
Back in my gun company days, they were usually the days when I was at a writers' conference and I managed to pull off something that got everybody's attention and I made all my competitors look bad. When I first designed the H&R Ultra Slug Hunter, we were at a Pennsylvania Outdoor Writers meeting, and another major firearms company was touting their new varmint rifle with, at the time, a triangular shaped barrel. I'm not saying who it is.
Oh, that piece of trash.
Yeah. And they were doing a really good job. They had some clay targets set up, downrange and popping them. And so I got down there with the Ultra Slug Hunter, which was the first one of the early prototypes. Didn't even have a scope on it, had irons on it. It took me 3 shots to get right where I wanted to be. And then remember, with an H&R, you got to pick it up out of the rest, break it open, and put the next round in it. And I went 3 for 3 on claybirds down the range, stationary. And I turned to the range officer, and I said, not bad for a 12 gauge at 100 yards. And as if I paid the man, which I did not, he turned around and he said, "Sir, those targets are at 165 yards." And needless to say, folks ran out of the shooting hut and yelled out to the crowd, and everybody wanted to come and see this slug gun that could break clay target, could hit a clay target at 165 yards. Needless to say, it was a good day.
Indeed.
Oh.
I think we have one of those at the library right now.
Okay. Yep.
So.
Well, there were 5 prototypes that I made originally that actually had longer, heavier barrels than the factory guns. The guns that we sold did. The guns we sold were incredibly accurate. My particular gun is one of those 5, and it was borrowed at one time when Federal first came out with the Federal Barnes Hybrid Sabot, and not me, but Shooting Times shot my gun 5 shots, 175 yards, 3.5 inches with a 12 gauge. Not too bad.
Yep.
So needless to say, that one will probably go in the ground with me, or maybe it'll get melted down when they burn me, whatever they decide to do with me when I'm done.
There you go. Well, I suppose we should probably
Robin,
put a
you
bow
have
on
created
this.
a great show tonight, sir. Thank you, sir.
I always have a ball with you guys. I mean, it's like, Jim, we've been friends for how long? Mike, same thing. It's
Yep.
kind of like coming home when I come see you guys. It's nice.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank
Happy to do.
Wow.
Well, read Paul Loud's last comment there, Jim.
Just think how much better the H&R would be if would have shot with a triangle barrel.
Ah, there you go. There you go. All right. Last H&R story. I got to tell this one.
Yep.
New York State Outdoor Writers, the Remington SPS 12 gauge cantilever mount slug gun and copper solids had just come out, and we're on the line, and they've basically got some metallic silhouettes laid out at like 60, 70, 80 yards. And, Remington's they've got the cantilever scope mount. They've got the nice loophole on top of it. And those copper solids are fast. So they're like on pink, 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 right? And that was the year we decided for outfitters up in Western provinces and then also in Alaska, we decided to build a single shot 10 gauge slug gun. Took 3.5 inch Federal slugs.
Oh my God.
Iron sights. So I went to the farthest target that there was because it was pretty close to the backstop. And I held iron sights. I held it high so I could hit it up on the back and make it flip and spin really good. So I pulled the trigger, and of course it's this immense boom. I mean, it's like the thing looks like an M79 grenade launcher. Okay. I hit, it was a ram. I think it was a ram. I hit it high in the back. It flipped over 3 times, laid on its side, slid, and stuck into the backstop. So now that I have everybody's attention, I turned to them and I said, "Boys, you can shoot them or you can kill them." And the line that was at Remington came right over to get black and blue with my gun.
10 gauge, 3.5 stuff. Oh my God.
Well, and the funny part is single shot break action with the ejector, right? So when I crack the thing open, when those petals open, that shell looks like it's about this long when it comes flying. It looked like 3.5 plus another 3/4 inch or so of petals. All of a sudden, it looks like, what the hell is that coming out? So anyway, yeah, it was a good time. Those things are always a lot of fun. They were a lot of fun. And being H&R, it was kind of funny because you could pick on the big companies, and if you did something better than them, it was amazing. If you failed, everybody expected it. But we didn't fail. But at H&R, we worked really hard at what we did, and we didn't fail very often. I've still got 2 H&R heavy barrel 223s that I'll pretty much hold up against anything that's out there. Of course, they were
Yeah.
made for me, but you know, they're still same barrel. The magic thing that people didn't know was in those days before we sold it to Marlin, very quietly, we did all of our shotgun barrels, but all of our drilling and rifling of barrels on our rifles was done for us by Green Mountain. So those are all Green Mountain rifle barrels. We chambered them ourselves, we profiled them ourselves, but all the internals were Green Mountain. So your $260 or $169 heavy barrel H&R that you bought at Walmart had a Green Mountain barrel on it.
Wow.
Button rifled. Yeah.
Yep. So
How did you get away with not stress relieving them after they reamed them, and then you went and turned them?
we stress relieved the long ones, like the 32-inch barrels for the if you remember the 32-inch Buffalo Classic, the 4570, they were stress relieved.
Okay.
The vast majority of them, they were 4110. They were good steel. One of the things that Branch Manley at the time, when he had created Green Mountain, was magical at was he had strain gauges on all of his equipment. He knew when a cutter was starting to wear because he had a strain gauge that was looking at that. On a deep hole drill, you have the long rod with the barb on the end that actually does the drilling. And so you had strain gauges that were looking at rotational torque on that. So everything was kept to a minimum. When they built the new factory, a Pratt & Whitney deep hole drill has X amount of oil in the base. Well, his didn't have any oil in the base. They had huge reservoirs of oil under the floor and filters and chiller systems. They were constantly working on that oil to keep it clean and keep it cool so that you were doing very, very minimal stress imparting into those barrels as you were cutting them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And we bought a lot of barrels from them. Well, we provided the steel. They just did the drilling and rifling for us. And as I say, everything else we did. We chambered them. We did all of the recessed crowning and things like that on them. But the funny story about the heavy barrel ultra varmint rifles was this. I'm out there one day talking to the guys in engineering, and what the heck, I'm just the marketing guy, right? And I said, we ought to make a heavy barrel. Oh, do you realize what a problem that would be? We'd have to come up with all new forms to go on the profiling lathes, et cetera. And I went, really? Because we make a 20 gauge that's 22 inches long. Why don't we run the 223 barrel on the 20 gauge profile? And the next day, we had a heavy barrel 223 varmint rifle.
Oh, God. A little too much common sense.
Sometimes it's just that simple, guys. And they were great. They were great guns. I mean, they just, to this day, they're just phenomenal. They're phenomenal little rifles. So think about it. Your headspace is established by a solid standing wall of steel.
Yeah.
Even the best bolt gun in the world, depending on how hard you push down on the bolt, you can torque those lugs in a little bit more or out a little bit less. The scope was mounted on the barrel, not something on the barrel that the barrel screws into. There were so many things that made that little H&R, when it was done right, a really neat little gun. And back in those days, the rifles, of course, were all investment cast heat-treated steel receivers. And those receivers at the time were being made for us by Formatel, which is the casting part of FN. And then they were shipped over, and we did all the machining here in the U.S. on them. So neat little guns. And obviously, I have a real soft spot in my heart for them. So I am still bad. I didn't buy as many as I should have or take as many when I left, and we sold it to Marlin. And so over the years since, I pretty much can't, if I see something that's of that era, write serial numbers when I know it's one of ours, I probably don't let it pass by. And then we got to do some magical things too. One of my favorites is was the old H&R 2506 single shot. You know why? Because with no receiver, you could put a 26-inch barrel on a 2506, and it was still shorter than most rifles.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Except the overbore in a 26-inch barrel meant you could actually burn all that powder inside, where it gave you some benefit, not out in the air as a big flamethrower. So that was that was one of the rifles that we built that just was kind of magical. It just, everything clicked on that gun.
Ruger number 1, 1B in 25-06.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, that's 26-inch barrel.
Yep.
It was a good gun.
Yep. I've got a 1V and 220 Swift.
Mm-hmm.
So
One with special runs.
Yep. But
That was,
but we had a good time. There was a lot of fun that we had there. We got to do a lot of neat things and build a lot of fun guns.
mhm.
So
Robin, there's a question for you from
Yes, sir.
GDW Outdoors. What year range H&R are you referring to?
1991 to 2000.
Very limited range.
So that was the H&R 1871 years. So starting with on New England Firearms, starting with I believe ND or I think ND as serial number starts, and because that's how it was N for New England Firearms and DEFG. Well, D you didn't use E because E looked like a 3 and people would get confused. So there's certain numbers, there's certain letters that you don't use that could be confused with a number. So, but anyway, yeah. Those are the years. And what's interesting is I never have yet to get a 4570 to replace the one that I had when I left and I didn't take with me. And I was at a gun show in Syracuse a couple of years ago or 3 years ago. And I went up and I saw it. This is great. And I opened it up and I looked down the barrel and I knew it was a Marlin because the rifling depth was just
Too shallow.
not even there compared to what the Green Mountains were. And people wondered why people wonder why that little inexpensive H&R Buffalo Classic 32-inch barrel 4570 why it shot so well. Well, Green Mountain stock and Branch Manley held NRA black powder long range titles for years with his barrel. The guy could make really good barrels for big bullets, and those 4570s were quite magical. So, and we're off topic. We're not talking about reloading. We're just talking about other guns. But anyway, that's okay, I guess.
We
Right?
do that. We do that here.
Yeah.
Guns are important reloading because you got to have something to unload them in.
You got to get brass somewhere.
Yep. So, well, thanks again for coming on, and
You're welcome. As always, a great pleasure. Merry Christmas to everybody out there. Have a great one. Have a great New Year. Safe, careful, happy. And if you guys are lucky enough to have, that deer season right after Christmas through New Year's in your states, enjoy, be safe, and be careful.
you bet.
Sir,
Merry
to
Christmas,
you
Happy
and
New
your
Year to you.
family, Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Thank you
Amen
very,
to
very
that,
much.
Paul.
Thank you very, very much.
Amen. Thank you, Robin. Really
Great
appreciate
time.
you.
Happy to do.
All right. Thanks, Robin.
Yep.
Don't go anywhere, Robin, please. Oh, shit. You kicked him out. Oh,
No.
he's still there.
Yeah. Just want to take a minute to thank Primary Arms and Patriot Patch Company. This is the current patch. Make sure you use the FRN code when you're at Patriot Patch or at Primary Arms. So, and we're wrapping this puppy up for the year. So on that note, keep your brass shiny.
Jump on the Millsap short bus.
Teach them shoot and reload when they're young.
Listen to your grandpa. Violence does solve problems. Your mother was wrong.
Especially if you use high explosives.
Support the Second Amendment. Do things legally, okay? Stay away from the HE stuff. Yeah, exactly. Don't tread on me. The Gadsden flag.
Yep. If you're struggling, 988 from your cell phone or 1-800-273-8255. They've got help for you. They'll get you to where you need to be. We want to keep you here, especially in the holiday season. So make sure you reach out. Remember, it's courage and bravery to reach out and admit you need some help and you're struggling. So don't suffer in silence.
Merry Christmas, y'all.
Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
Merry
Thanks, all.
Christmas. Happy New Year, everybody.